Poem is The Cold Within. It was written by James Patrick Kinney, an American poet, in 1960s. He belonged to Connecticut. So, the social background of a poem is belonging to that area in which there was a tradition of racism and color creed. People used to hate black Americans, and that was a age of transition also. So, the poet saw all these things in the society: racism, ethnicity, class struggle, religious division, and himself personally he was hated for being poor, because James Patrick Kinney could not continue his education after class 10th. He has to take care of his mother. So, all these circumstances led him to write this poem. The tone of this poem is rather sad and melancholic. The setting is sad and tone is very depressing, but the message is very strong. The message of the poem is that to attain universal brotherhood, we have to give up our all negative feeling of racism, class struggle, the religious differences, the gender discrimination, the ethnicism. Unless and until we don't give up all these feelings, we will die of cold within or are cold. We do not have any warmth, any humane feeling, any feeling of kindness, tenderness. Man is rather moved by his selfishness. So, the message is very strong that human has to move with their selflessness rather than selfishness. They have to give up their racial attitude and believe in universal brotherhood. They have to give up their religious discrimination, and they have to believe that all religion are equal. They have to have a self belief in gender equality, and they should not be proud of their ethnicity, or they must not hate anyone for his ethnicity. And the poet is very strong on the point of class struggle, because he has given two stanzas for this: a rich hating the poor and the poor hating the rich. And in the last stanza of the poem, ending scene, the word sin has been used, and instead of men or women, the poet has used human word. So, it gives an idea that poem has to do something with the God also, because the word sin is not used in reference of the humans. This word sin must be used in the reference of the God. And when he is saying man, when he is not saying man or women, he is saying human. So, he is trying to admit a message that all the men and women are equal in the eyes of the God, and the man and women who are equal in the eyes of the God, they should be treated as humans. So, it is a idea of brotherhood that the poet is trying to give up. So, the poem stands for equality and the points what I have raised. So, it is a voice of equality, and it is the voice for all human goodness, and it is again against all our narrow mindedness, which consists of whatever I said: race, religion, gender, ethnicity. So, I will start the poem and reading it para by para. 6 humans trapped by happenstance. So, there were 6 humans. Now, the poet is not writing there were 6 women or 6 men. There were 6 humans and they were trapped in a happenstance. So, if we literally take the meaning of happenstance, it means chance. But if we take a figurative meaning of happenstance, it may take a twist that they were trapped by the will of the God. So, 6 humans trapped by happenstance in bleak and bitter cold. So, the two adjectives are being used for cold. It was very cold and the cold was bleak and bitter. So, bleak is rather glooming and bitter is severe. So, it was a glooming and severe cold. Each one possessed a stick of wood, or so the story told. So, there were 6 humans, each holding a stick of wood in a severe and gloomy cold. So, this is the plotting of the poem. What is the plot? There is severe cold and 6 humans are trapped by chance or by the will of the God, and after being trapped, they are together and the cold is bleak and bitter. Now, it gives an idea, the first stanza gives the idea that poem is in a narration style. It's like a storytelling, narration style, and the tone is suppressive, consisting of depression, melancholic, sad, unhappy tone. So, the poem is said that 6 humans were trapped in this bleak and bitter cold. Now, come to the second stanza. Their dying fire in need of logs, but the first one held hers back. So, there was a fire and that fire was dying. Fire was dying. For what? Fire needs log to burn, and they all had sticks and they all had logs. So, rather they had stick of wood, not logs. So, the fire needed logs, fire needed sticks, but the first out of them was a woman, was a lady, for the first one held her back. For of the faces round the fire, she noticed one was black. So, the first lady was not willing to put her wood into the fire, and that fire was needed for the survival of all 6 humans. And it was a chance of that lady to put that stick into the fire, so that all may get the heat and they may survive from the bleak and bitter cold. But she was not ready for that, because she was moved by the racial attitude. Now, this gives what I said in the starting, that in the Connecticut that time there was extreme racial bitterness. So, this gives an idea of the mind of the lady, who was moved by the fact that one of the persons sitting over here is of black color. So, why should I put my stick? So, in that case he will also get the warmth of the fire. So, she was not willing to give warmth, heat to that black man. She was having so hatred for that black man. Now, in the starting, as I said, in the eyes of God all are equal, they are humans, but that lady is not thinking like this. She is moved by the racial attitude and extreme hatred and narrow mindedness, rather animosity. So, with her feeling of opposition towards blackness, black skin. And obviously, it indirectly indicates that she was a white lady. So, the white lady hated the black man as she saw his face in the fire. So, she was not ready to put her stick into the fire. Now, just notice that the dying fire in needs of log, but the first one held her back, for of the faces round the fire she noticed one was black. So, back black. If we look at the first stanza, we see cold, told. So, every second and fourth line is rhyming. And if you look at the first line of the poem, 6 humans were trapped by happenstance, H, it is an alliteration. So, there is a rhyming scheme, line 2 and 4, and there is an alliteration in the starting of the line. Now, let us see, we have seen the attitude of the first lady. Now, the next man, looking across the way, saw one knot of his church. So, next man had a religious bias. So, he looked at the cross of the other person and he saw that the other person who is sitting over there, he did not belong to his church and could not bring himself to give the fire his stick of birch. So, he was holding the wood of birch tree. He was not ready to put his wood into the fire because the man who was sitting just beside him, as he saw him, belonged to a church different from his church. So, there is a religious difference, and in case of religious difference, there is a point of hatred also. So, that person who is holding a cross, he is not thinking that the other person, his religion may be equal to my religion. He is thinking that my religion is superior to his religion and he is not a member of my religious sect. So, I should hate him, and if I hate him, then why should I put my stick to the fire, because in that case he will get the warmth, he will get the heat and he will survive. No matter I survive or I do not survive, but he should not survive. And that was the point that lady was thinking, no matter I survive or not survive, but that black man should not survive. The third one sat in the tattered clothes. He gave his coat a hitch. Why should his log be put to use to warm the ideal rich? Now, the third man was really poor. His clothes were tattered. He did not have enough clothes to cover his body. So, what did he do? Whatever clothes he did have, he covered himself. He gave a hitch to his coat. He covered himself from the bleak and bitter cold. I should be warm. Whatever clothes he did had, he gave a hitch to his coat, means whatever clothes he did have, he covered that his body from that clothes. And he was thinking that why should I put my wood into the fire? Now, what is stopping him? He saw a rich man sitting over there and he was poor. So, there is a class struggle. The poor is thinking that the rich is exploiting him, the poor is hating the rich and the rich is hating the poor. So, the poor man thought that my wood should not warm this rich man. So, why should I put my stick into the fire? In that case, he will get the heat So, no matter I survive or don't survive, and obviously I will survive. He just gave a hitch to his coat and cheating himself, he thought I will survive, he will die. So, this is a way of telling lie to himself that nothing will happen to me, all the wrong will happen to the other people. So, he gave hitch to the coat and he thought, why should my wood warm the ideal rich? That person who is doing nothing and he is rich, therefore I hate him. So, that was the feeling of narrow mindedness of a poor man to a rich man. And in eyes of the God, the poor man is equal to the rich man. All the sects are equal, all the religions are equal, all the caste and creed and color are equal because God has created them all. Now it was the turn of the rich man. The rich man just sat back and thought. So, rich man was sitting back over there and he was thinking of his wealth, of the wealth he had in his store. So, he was thinking of his wealth, how much wealth do I possess and how to keep what he has earned. So, now he was planning. So, how should I keep, how should I make safe that wealth what I have earned from the lazy, shiftless poor. So, how should I keep that wealth safe? From whom? From the poor people, aimless people who are going to take his wealth. So, he should secure his wealth. He was thinking that how will I secure my wealth? And from lazy and aimless, shiftless, aimless people. So, all were preoccupied by their thoughts. All people did have a feeling of suspicion towards other. They were prejudiced by their mind. They had a malice for other people. There was no point of kindness. There was no point of humanity. So, instead of humanity, love and kindness, they were thinking of malice. They were thinking of hatred. Now, it was a turn of black man. So, black man was filled with revenge, feeling of revenge towards the white. So, the black man's face bespoke revenge. So, his face reading show that he wants revenge. As the fire passed from his sight. So, now this line indicates that fire is dying out. Now, there is an urgent need to give the wood over there, but he was moved by the feeling of revenge and his revenge overpowered all his nice good feelings. He was not thinking of any kindness, he was not thinking of even escaping himself, he was just thinking that he need revenge and any white should not benefit from him. So, why should he put his log to that? So, for all he saw in his stick of wood was a chance to spite the white. So, he was thinking that it is a good chance to take the revenge from the white. Let the white person should die. That is a secondary question, I will die or not die. And who knows that only white person dies, I may not die. So, he got a chance, he was just thinking that it is a chance to take the revenge. And the last man of this forlorn group. Now, the poet has used the word forlorn. Here it is oxymoron and rather it is a ironical statement, because poet is saying a group and a forlorn is lonely. So, lonely group, there cannot be a lonely group. They are sitting, so it's not lonely, but they are lonely because their heart are not close to each other. They do not share any common feeling of goodness or humanity. They were not standing on any common platform of humanity. So that's why it has been said it's a forlorn group. So position situation is ironical. So last man was very clever. So how did he play the game? He did have a very materialistic attitude. He thinks that I should give to only to those people who give to me. Unless I receive anything, I won't give anything to anybody. So I just believe in the get and give game. I do not work, I do not do anything out of my kindness. I need an urgent result of anything. If someone gives me, then I will give him. And nobody here is giving anything, so why should he give? So the last man was extremely selfish, materialistic, pragmatic. He was considering that no one is ready to give his wood to the fire, then why should I put my wood to the fire? So the last man of this forlorn group did not accept for gain. So he did everything for the gain. If he gained somewhere, then he invested anything. Giving only to those who gave, so he did give to only to those people who gave to him, was how he played the game. So this was his way of playing the game. So all the 6 humans thought in their mind, we will not put our sticks into the dying fire. So their logs held tight in the death's still hands. Ultimately the fire died out and they were frozen to death. All 6 were frozen to death, and here personification has been done. Their logs held tight in death's still hands. So deaths do not have hands. So when they were dead, they were holding their logs. Now what does this indicate? This indicates that we want the resource of this world in our pocket, and we are not willing anything to give anything to anybody. We are not moved by our kindness. We are not moved by our humanity. We are not moved by our brotherhood. And poet wants all these things. We should be moved by all these things. But actually what is happening? All these people are getting moved by racist attitude, ethnic attitude, color discrimination, creed discrimination, class struggle. So just opposite qualities. What should a human possess? And that what poet has seen in his life. So he is reflecting that in a poem. So their logs held tight in the death's still hand was proof of a human sin. So here the poet is saying it's a proof of the human sin, that after even the death they are not giving up their property of wood. They were holding it very tight. They all died of bitter cold. So the poet is trying to give the message that we should not hold our resources. We should have sharing and caring and kindness and goodness for the other people also. They did not die from the cold without. So now what poet is saying, that they did not die of the cold that is outside. They did not die of bitter and bleak cold. They died from the cold within. So how did they die? Because their heart were cold. They do not have any warmth of relationships. They do not have any common stand of humanity. So there was much more cold inside than it was cool outside. So they did not die of that bitter and bleak cold. So they died of their coldness. So here coldness is being compared to selfishness, negative qualities, racial qualities, religious discrimination, caste discrimination, all the negative things, and heat is connected to positive qualities, the good qualities of human beings. So, there is a very strong message that discriminatory attitude will lead to only one thing, and that is devastation. We have to share and care, and we have to share everything. And the title of the poem is very appropriate, The Cold Within. So, we lose everything in this world if we do have cold in our hearts. Outer cold will not harm us. So, if we have warmth in our heart, then with no doubt we are going to survive. And if we will behave like this, as these 6 humans behaved, we will get the result of the sin that we are possessing, we are doing. So, that is the strong message of the poet, and that was very controversial poem. So, initially when it was written, it was rejected outright, but later it was accepted and became one of the most popular poems when it was read in the councils of religion. So, thank you very much.